session. We are here to help you understand, but more question coming from you is more clarity that we can establish in this area basically. So please feel free to intervene any of us in between, and I think the team will facilitate here. So we have Anisha, Shivangi, Deepa here to help you with, and Aditya is here. With this, I welcome Srinivas for your initial remark, and then we'll take it out from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinayak, for the opportunity to speak. Just want to, first of all, welcome all of you. I'm Data Privacy Head for Infosys, and I've been there in this role for about 14 years. So it's just that we started this function a little earlier than many of others in the industry, and that's how we got, I'd say, relatively more exposure on the perspectives, global perspectives. So I would like to just share some perspectives that are relevant today, and let it be the one which is thought-provoking for the rest of the conversation. There are so many conversations planned that I want not to be in between them. We are actually living in a very interesting times when we see that on one side the digital industry is proliferating at this pace. On the other side, on the physical infrastructure and other part of the amenities in society, we still are lagging behind. The whole world, the relatively developed world, saw the brick and mortar industry, public amenities, the roads, the infrastructure, the law enforcement, lots of other things which we want in a modern society. They have been there for ages, and then this digital world came. For us, it's just the other way around. We are yet to catch up on the rest of the world, but in the meanwhile, we have taken this as an area of thrust, rightly so, because it's a very important opportunity for us to grow in the world, and we demonstrated it. But this brings us very important responsibility on the country to see that we understand what we are doing. When we embrace innovation, digital innovation to move forward, we have to keep in view the stakeholders of this ecosystem. Are they educated enough? Are they literate enough? Do we understand? And this stakeholders is not just consumers, citizens, but even the industry players, the startups, the ones who make law, the government officials. All of us need to understand, and I think there is a huge gap in my view, and that's the biggest priority I want to highlight, because I've been interacting across the world as well as in India. The awareness seems to be low. Some even confuse today data privacy with confidentiality of data. They just use, they say just encrypt the data and such tools, and then you get data privacy. And maybe because of ignorance, and some may be doing deliberately because there's a conflict of interest. The digital industry wants to take privacy as lower priority, and there are others who say that if you want privacy, you're trying to hide something. That many of you are aware of this nothing to hide fallacy, right? So the opposite of privacy is not secrecy. It's not that when we want privacy, we are doing some nefarious activities and we want to keep it under the table. There is a huge spectrum in between what you want to hide and on one side privacy and the other side making public. And this realization is very important, and our role as privacy engineering and engineers and privacy professionals is to help the digital ecosystem or government, industry to strike the right balance and bring a positive sum game. It is not about whether privacy or digital India or digital growth, both are required, and we can do it. In many parts of the world, we have demonstrated it can be done. There are approaches called privacy by design. Many of you are familiar. Although it's initially it started with Dr. Hankovic proposing 7 principles, it has evolved a lot by various bodies, and we have now frameworks available, NIST, ISO. So we should leverage those frameworks, adopt privacy-enhancing technologies, put privacy safeguards, organizational measures, right structures, responsibilities in order to build privacy right from concept stage, not just design. I would say that privacy is in fact increasingly becoming a functional requirement. It's not an NFR. Please understand. It is the one which determines and influences what you can do and you can't. And therefore, there is some amount of privacy which is still NFR, but it is also a functional requirement, and we have to participate with consumers, customers in order to let them be aware of the risks that we are taking, and depending on their risk appetite and privacy strategy, influence the use cases to see that we are able to deliver the functionality and at the same time ensure that there is privacy. Now, what is this privacy when we talk about ensuring privacy? It's not an absolute right. We all know there are certain aspects you can achieve, which is essential in a democratic society. There are data has to be collected for several purposes, and many of you would know Article 6 of GDPR rightly illustrates 6 provisions, with 4 of them commonly used, and one of them happens to be consent, which must be least used, because consent comes with a heavy burden of demonstrating proper use of that consent provision. And that must be used least. Unfortunately, that is used most. And a lot of things are kept under the garb of consent to say that we can do anything with the data because you have given consent. And consent is often used as a substitute for accountability. Whereas it's very clear that consent is just one of the ways to empower citizens and consumers, and the organizations have to be made accountable to respect the choices made by people. And for that purpose, there are safeguards available in the law which need to be enforced. And when we say enforcement, it is not that government is going to tell what is right and wrong for you on privacy, but it is allowing you where possible to exercise choice and make organizations accountable to respect those choices. That's all. It's simple. We should not let any law or standard dictate anything more than that, because privacy is context-based. We all have different needs of privacy at different points of time, different days, different situations. As you would have read, many of you, the 4 states proposed by Professor Alan Weston. All those 4 states of privacy are important, and we switch those contexts. It's not that some of us are very secretive, some of them are very public. We have to respect that. And in the physical world, we know how to conduct ourselves, where to speak how much, how to dress ourselves, what to let others know, what not to let others know. That control that we exercise in physical world cannot be eliminated by digital world, where the ability to glean data is increasing, and the accountability is weak, and therefore the digital industry is pervading into our lives. When I say digital industry, there is no one person who's enemy. The functions, the need for embracing innovation itself dictates centers of business opportunity, itself dictates the use cases. And as Vinayak also mentioned a while ago, which I keep talking about, is that in case of, unlike cybersecurity, where the enemy is somewhere else, unknown hacker, unknown nation hacker, in case of privacy, the enemy is within the organization. In case of security, the entire organizational machinery is supporting CISO to keep that enemy away. Although they also get non-cooperation because of operational inconvenience, that's understood. But in case of privacy, we are dealing with our own colleagues, CTO, CIO, marketing head, people who wants to do things, many of the things. And therefore, our role is much more difficult, but we need to do it. There's no choice, and this become a, therefore, techno-legal function. There is a legal angle, but a lot of it is increasingly become technological, because the way these legal provisions apply, for that you need to understand how data flows, what is AI, what is explainability in AI, and we are seeing interesting concepts being which are challenging our fundamental thoughts on some of the notions, right? We used to think that data right to be forgotten was a concept which were never thought. The Google versus Spain case proved a few years ago. Then the recent Clearview breach you would have seen, where it said data which is publicly available cannot be processed without permission. Most countries have given the judgment that you cannot use facial recognition without the permission of the people. Similarly, there is an AI Act now coming, which not the European AI Act. There's a new act called AI Liability Act, which not only makes users but also manufacturers of AI accountable. It's a very paradigm shift. So far, we used to have the concept of data controller and processor. This new act is going to bring accountability to manufacturers of AI, people who design tools, and I'm sure many of you in the room will be ones who develop pets. So please be aware that you also maybe one day held accountable, and it's a good thing. We all have to be responsible. In the ecosystem, everybody has a stakes. You cannot leave completely on controller who's helpless. They received a product, they can't configure, they got to go back to drawing board stage. So the entire ecosystem, all of us have a role, and it's our duty to see that all are educated, made aware, and we strike the right balance. Having said this, there are very important priorities in the country, in the world, of cross-border trade, crime prevention, surveillance, All this is important, and therefore many of those intrude into our privacy, including the corporate, inside our corporate networks, there is need for monitoring, right? Surveillance, monitoring. All those infringe into privacy, but all those are necessary in a democratic society. So our role is to let that balance be in control. And I want to end this saying that when we make these laws, policy standards, we should remember India is rapidly growing, and we also, along with the infrastructure, we also need to grow in terms of human rights. And privacy is one such thing which was declared in the recent judgment of Puttasswamy, Supreme Court judgment. And I would remind you once again about the speech given by our Chief Justice just 1 week ago in Mumbai in a lecture, I'm not remembering which lecture, where he mentioned, I'm not using exact words, that Constitution is not a reflection of what we are doing today. It's what we want to be tomorrow. That's the basis on which Constitution is made. Very, very important, profound statement. And I think we should, when we make laws, policies, standards, everywhere it's like our ethical policy behind it, is we want to make India the world which is developed world. We want to look there. Our human rights, our Constitution, all are borrowed from best in class, right? America, Europe, those United Nations, human rights. So there is no way we should be left behind. But having said that, digital inclusivity, all those are also a priority. So it is not about this and that, but this or that, but it is both. So my closing comment is how to achieve both is what we should debate, and not whether we should have privacy or whether we should have digital innovation. Thank you.
Yeah. So now I'll hand over to the ACI policy team, but before that, there are definitely interesting sessions here. Session on DPO, there is a specific session on legal jurisprudence that we are doing. Towards the end is a very interesting session. We are culminating or closing this with Chiranavas inviting some CMOs here. So the chief marketing officers, that's the interesting thing which is happening, right? So this entire discussion is now going to different level, and CMOs came to us if we want to also part of this interaction and understand how this will impact us and what we should be doing. Because most of the marketing plans are based on data, and we will close this interaction with them. So I will be also joining for that interaction. So over to you, Shivangi, Anisha, and Deepa.